Hey everyone, thanks for joining us again. You've already learned a little bit about the rise of some totalitarians um, in Italy and in the Soviet Union or Russia and in Japan. So today we're going to focus on the rise of Hitler. And so let me share this screen with you. The rise of Hitler. And this is a very interesting story, I think. And some of the lessons of war that we learned last week kind of have come into play here. I hope you're kind of seeing those connections, and they will here today. First of all, a little bit about how Hitler grew up, and I do this because I think we hope that there are signs and indications of what people are going to be like, and we can identify these monsters somehow. But that's not always the case. And so, if you look at this is a little bit of Hitler's childhood. He had a rough father who didn't really care for him, but his mother was fantastic, gentle, loving. He was clearly a mama's boy. He loved his mother so much. He loved his father too. There are stories of him bringing his father in from being drunk outside the house and things like that. So it wasn't like from the beginning he was a psychopathic killer. He was a good student. There are stories that he had trouble following orders. I'm not sure if those are true or not, but those could be stories made up by people after the fact. He went to a religious school, so I think that's important to know that he wasn't brought up in some horrible conditions. But his father did die when he was 13, so that obviously probably had an impact on him. His mother died a few years later, and again, I mean, there was one person who he loved and cared about was his mother, and so this was a crushing moment in the young adult Adolf Hitler. He decided that he wants to be an artist. So he moves to Vienna, which is in Austria, by the way. That's where he was born and from, not Germany. And Vienna was like an artistic paradise, right? He couldn't find any work, though, when he moved there. So he had some troubled times. He was homeless off and on for like 5 years, trying to find work, trying to find ways to support himself. And he tried to get into art school, but he was never accepted. He said that he had trouble drawing heads of humans. But let me show you what I'm about to show you is some of his art. You tell me if you think if he was good enough to get into art school or not. So clearly, I mean, to me, this is better than anything I can do or ever will be able to do. So this is what his work was like that did not allow him to get into art school. And I can't help but think one of the things that we talked about is the average person matters. I mean, what if these people who had the power to decide whether or not people got into art school or not, what if they allowed Hitler in? Would things be different? And even now, there's another question for you to think about. Should the quality of his art be based upon the quality of his art or with him as well? And that issue kind of comes up again and again, even today, about certain musicians and actors and things. Like, should we care about their artwork and what they produce and how they make us feel and think? Or should we also be concerned about their background and what kind of people they are? It's a great thing to think about. And I'm not sure if I have an answer. But certainly as he's struggling, Hitler is struggling, a young Hitler is struggling. And as we all do when we struggle or get caught doing something that we should be doing or whatever, we try to scapegoat, right? We try to blame other people. The concept of scapegoating is you can put all the burdens on something else, and therefore to kind of alleviate your own responsibility in that situation. And so during this time, there's a lot of scapegoating on, and some of the people and the groups that get blamed for things are the socialists, the communists, and the Jews that are throughout Europe at this time. Here he is in World War One. On all accounts, he was a pretty good soldier. He got some medals. He was wounded a couple times. You remember the story about the British soldier Tandy, who saved his life by not killing him. He was a victim of a poison gas attack as well, and his eyes were bandaged up. And he remembers this from the surrender of Germany in World War One. He says, on November 10th, 1918, a priest from Pasewalk, Germany, walked into the nearby military hospital to deliver grave news to its wounded occupants. The war was lost and Imperial Germany was no more. The old man wept as he outlined the details to his stunned audience. There was to be an armistice on the next day. Germany was now a republic, and the Kaiser, the nation's leader, was to abdicate. A lance corporal recovering from the effects of poison gas reeled away from the crowd. In his memoirs, he wrote, this is Hitler writing, "I staggered and stumbled back to my ward and buried my aching head between the blankets and pillow." And he reportedly cried. The only other time he said he cried in his life was when his mother died. So certainly there's this love of his country, and a commitment to what he was fighting for, and something that he felt very deeply. And so after World War One, he joined what becomes the Nazi Party, and he just joined it as a guy, as a soldier, as a veteran, and he worked his way up into the leadership. He did that by traveling around and meeting with people and talking with people and giving speeches. The Nazi Party unveiled its 25-point program in 1920. And I think this year is very, very important, because sometimes I think people try to pretend that we didn't know what the Nazi Party was all about until it was too late. But here is 1920, and World War II doesn't begin until 1939. So this is a 19-year notice of what the Nazis are all about. And part of their 25-point program is to get more living space for Germans, which means territory. It blamed the Jews for a lot of the social and cultural and economic ills of the country and the world. And it called for a stronger military to defend the German homeland. And again, this is all in 1920, long before Hitler takes power and long before the war begins. He, again, is a leader in the Nazi Party, and he wants to lead a revolt against a state of Germany, the state of Bavaria. And so he goes to this beer hall in Munich and goes to the top floor. You see the picture here. This is where he gave speeches from. And he gets all his friends together, and they're going to go overthrow the government. It didn't work. And he is arrested for treason, Hitler is, and sent to jail. While he's in jail, he writes his book called Mein Kampf, or My Struggle. And in his book, Mein Kampf, he just echoes a lot of what the Nazis stood for in 1920. The idea of blaming Jews for things, and communists and socialists, the need for Germany to rebuild its military, and the need for more living space. Lebensraum is the German word for that. So yeah, that's kind of how he gets involved in politics and becomes like absorbed in politics. By the way, I've been to this. I think that might be a picture. No, that is a picture that I took of the beer hall in Munich. And it was crazy, because I know that I shouldn't like being there, but it still is an active beer hall, and you can see that a lot of people can fit into this place, and a lot of people do fit into this place. And I had a great time while I was there, all with the understanding of knowing what occurred there back in the 1920s. Makes you think a little bit. So Hitler's out of power. He keeps rising up, and the Nazis get more and more political power through the free elections in what's called the Weimar Republic in Germany. It's a democracy, a socialist democracy in Germany. You can see the vote tallies there in 1930. 6.5 million Germans vote for Nazis. And again, the Nazis are not hiding what they stand for. All the way back to 1920, if you remember, they've kind of spelled out what they were all about. So with the strength and the growing strength of the Nazi party inside Germany, Hitler runs for president in 1932. Now, the president is the kind of the head of state of the German government at the time, and he loses that to the guy you see in this picture. The guy in the general, he was a general, the guy he lost to in World War One, national hero. Hitler loses to that person, but that the president of Germany had the power to appoint what's called the chancellor. The chancellor kind of ran the day-to-day operations of the government inside the country, while the president kind of oversaw everything and how the country interacted with other countries. So the newly elected president who beat Hitler thought one way to bring the country together would be to appoint Hitler as the chancellor of Germany. And so he did. And so this is all legal. This is all democracy. This is not like anyone seizing power, even though Hitler had that experience in Bavaria where he tried to seize power. That didn't work, so he gets it legally. Now I want to make sure you understand that there were Nazi thugs who would go around the countryside and beat people up and cause violence and things. So it wasn't like the Nazis were all nice and fuzzy. But Hitler gets to be the chancellor of Germany all through legal means. As the chancellor, he worked with the Reichstag, which is like the Congress of Germany. And after he becomes chancellor, he gets the Reichstag to pass something called the Enabling Act. The Enabling Act is like a law that was passed that gave Hitler the power to take certain actions without the approval of the Reichstag. Basically, almost giving Hitler dictatorial powers. And again, this was all legal. Oh, and I guess that's the end of the slide, because that's how he gets power. And you'll see one of the first things Hitler does under the Enabling Act is to abolish all other political parties besides the Nazi Party. And this is a thing that you saw in all the other totalitarians as well. The first thing they try to do is to silence the opposition. And once you can silence the opposition, then you kind of have the free reign to do whatever you want to do. And so this is what Hitler does too. He's not the first one to do it. All the other people did it as well, but he does it very effectively. And so now he is basically the head of Germany. He gets that power through legal means, even though his Nazi party did use violence and threats to take power. So that's how Hitler gets to power. That's how he was as a kid and all that. Hopefully that helps with you with your assignment, which is about like, what's the responsibility of the German people in all this? We know that average people matter and leaders matter, but how do you get to be the leader if you don't have the support of the people? And so the question is going to ask you to think about what responsibility the German people have in allowing Hitler to take power this way. So good luck with that, and hopefully you have a good week, and I will see you next time.